In this video, we are going to learn about constitutional, administrative and judicial developments during British rule from 1773 to 1858. First thing you need to understand, when the establishment of East India Company in 1600 and its transformation into the ruling body from trading one in 1765 had little immediate impact on Indian polity and governance. But the period between 1773 and 1858 under the company rule and then under the British Crown till 1947 witnessed a plethora of constitutional and administrative changes. The nature and the objective of these changes were to serve the British imperial ideology, but unintentionally they introduced elements of the modern state into the India's political and administrative system. Anyhow, constitutional development between 1773 and 1858, when the Battle of Boxer 1764, the East India Company got the Diwani right. It was the right to collect revenue of Bengal, Bihar and Odisha. Besides that, an annual subsidy was to pay to the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II, and an annual pension to the Nawab of Awadh and Sujaut Tawla. And the company appointed two Indians as deputy divans, that was Muhammad Riza Khan for Bengal and Raja Shitab Rai for Bihar. In 1767, the first intervention in Indian affairs by the British government came in 1767. It demanded 10% share in the plunder amounting of £4 million annually. Between the 1765 to 72, the dual system of government, where the company had the authority but no responsibility, and its Indian representatives had all the responsibility but no authority, continued for 7 years. This period was characterized by rampant corruption among the servants of the company, who made full use of private trading to enrich themselves. Besides that, excessive revenue collection and operation of peasantry, and the company bankruptcy while the servants were flourishing. By now, the British government decided to regulate the company to bring some order into its business. From now, there would be a gradual increase in controlling laws. The Regulating Act of 1773. The 1773 Regulating Act brought the British government involvement in Indian affairs into the effort to control and regulate the functioning of East India Company. It recognized that the company rule in India extended beyond mere trade to administrative and political fields, and introduced the element of centralized administration. Alright, the directors of the company were required to submit all correspondence regarding the revenue affairs and civil and military administration to the government. Thus, for the first time, the British cabinet was given the right to exercise control over Indian affairs. But in Bengal, the administrative was to be carried out by Governor General and a council that was consisting of 4 members representing civil and military government. They were required to function according to the majority rule, wherein Hastings and 4 others were named in this act. Later ones were to be appointed by the company. A Supreme Court of Judicial was to be established in Bengal with original and appellate jurisdictions, where all the subjects could seek redressal. In practice, however, a Supreme Court had a debatable jurisdiction vis-a-vis a council, which created various problems. Then the Governor General could exercise some powers over Bombay and Madras again, a vague provision which created money problems. The whole scheme was based on the checks and balances. Amendments in 1781. It was the amendment when the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court was defined within Calcutta. It was to administer the personal law of the defendant, and the servants of the government were immune if they did not anything while discharging their duties. So the social and religious usages of the subjects were to be honored. After the amendment of 1781, Pitt's India Act of 1784 came into the existence. The Pitt's India Act gave the British government a large measure of control over the company's affairs. In fact, the company became the subordinate department of the state, and the company territories in India were termed as British possessions. The government's control over the company's affairs was greatly extended. A board of control consisting of Chancellor of Exchequer, a Secretary of State and 4 members of Privy Council to be appointed by the Crown were to exercise the control over the company's civil, military and revenue affairs. So all the dispatches were to be approved by the board. This leads to the dual system of control was set up. So in India, the Governor General was to have a council of 3, including the Commander-in-Chief and the presidencies of Bombay and Madras. They were made to subordinate to the Governor General. A prohibition. It was a general prohibition. It was placed on aggressive wars and treaties that was breached often. After that, the Act of 1786 came into the existence, in which the Cornwallis wanted to have the power of both the Governor General and the Commander in Chief. That the new Act conceded this demand and also gave him the power, and the Cornwallis was allowed to override the Council's decision. If he honored the responsibility of the decision, later the provision was extended to all the Governor Generals. In the Charter Act of 1793, the Act renewed the company's commercial privileges for next 20 years. And the company, after paying the necessary expenses, interests, dividends, salaries, etc. from the Indian revenues, was to pay 5 lakh pounds annually to the British government. This was the royal approval was mandated for the appointment of the Governor General, the Governors and the Commander-in-Chief. Senior officials of the company were debarred from leaving India without any permission. Doing so was treated as a resignation, and the company was empowered to give the licenses to the individuals as well as the company employees to trade in India. The license is known as privilege or country trade. So it was paved the way for shipments of opium to China. The revenue administration was separated from judiciary functions, and this led to the disappearing of the mal adalats. Besides that, the home government members was to be paid out of the Indian revenues, which prompted up to 1919. In the Charter Act of 1813, the business interests were pressing for an end to the company's monopoly over the trade in India because of the spirit of laissez-faire and the continual system by Napoleon by which the European ports were closed for Britain. The 1813 Act sought to redress these grievances, like the company monopoly over trade in India ended, but the company retained the trade with China and the trade in trade. Besides that, the company shareholders were given a 10.5% dividend on the revenue of India, and the company shareholders were given also a possession of territories and the revenue for 20 years more, without a prejudice to the sovereignty of the crown. Thus, the constitutional position of the British territories in India was defined explicitly for the first time. Besides that, the power of board of control were further enlarged, and a sum of 1 lakh rupees was to be set aside for the revival, promotion and encouragement of literature, learning and science among the natives of India every year. So this was an important statement from the point of state's responsibility for education. The regulations made by the Council of Madras, Bombay and Calcutta were now required to be laid before the British Parliament. In the constitutional position of the British territories in India was thus explicitly defined for the first time, and separate accounts were to be kept regarding the commercial transactions and territorial revenues. The power of superintendence and direction of the board of control was not only defined, but it is also enlarged considerably. Besides that, the Christian missionaries were also permitted to come in India and preach their religion. The Charter Act of 1833, the lease of 20 years of the company was further extended. Territories of India were to be governed in the name of the crown, and the company's monopoly over trade with China and in tea also ended. All these restrictions on European immigration and the acquisition of property in India were lifted. Thus, the way was paved for the wholesale European colonization of India. In India, a financial, legislative and administrative centralization of the government was envisaged. The Governor General was given a power to superintend, control and direct the civil and military affairs of the company. Bengal, Madras, Bombay and all the other territories were placed under the complete control of the Governor General. All the revenues were to be raised under the authority of the Governor General, who have complete control over the expenditure too. The governments of Madras and Bombay were drastically deprived of their legislative powers and left with the right of proposing to the Governor General the projects of law which they thought to be expedient. A law member was also added to the Governor General's Council for professional advice on lawmaking. Indian laws were to be codified and consolidated, but no citizen was to be denied employment under the company on the basis of religion, color, birth, descent, etc. Although the reality was different, the declaration formed the sheet anchor of the political agitation in India, and the administrator was urged to take steps to ameliorate the conditions of slaves and to ultimately abolish the slavery. Slavery was abolished in 1843. After the Charter Act of 1833, the company was to continue possession of territories unless the Parliament provided otherwise, and the strength of the Court of Directors were reduced to 18, and the company's patronage over the services was dissolved, and the services were now thrown upon a open to the competitive examinations, and the law member became the full member of the Governor General's Executive Council, and the separation of executive and legislative functions of the government of British India progressed with the inclusion of 6 additional members for legislative purpose. Besides that, the local representations were introduced in the Indian legislature, and this legislature wing came to be known as the Indian Legislative Council. However, a law to be promulgated needed the assent of the Governor General, and the Governor General could veto any bill of the Legislative Council. After that, the Act of Better Government of India 1858 came, and after the Revolt of 1857, it was exposed the company's limitations in the administrating under the complex situations. Till then, there had not been much accountability, and the Act of 1858 sought to rectify what India was to be governed by in the name of Crown through a secretary or the state of council of 15. So this was the initiative, and the final decision was to be with the secretary of the state, and the council was to just advisory in nature. Thus the dual system introduced by the Pitt's India Act came to an end. After that, the Governor General became the viceroy. His prestige, if not authority, increased, and the assumption of power by Crown was one of the formality rather than the substance. It gave a decent burial to an already dead horse, the company's administration. I hope you find this video informative. Thank you for watching it.